Have you ever felt like something in this world just shouldn't exist? Like there are forces walking among us that were never part of God's original design? Well, what if I told you that even in Noah's time, God made that exact decision? Some creatures were so corrupted, so unnatural, that he didn't just ignore them. He refused to let them on the ark. Yes, we've all heard the children's version of the story, two of every kind, cozy inside a wooden boat. But that version leaves out something massive. There were beings, real, terrifying, powerful, that God deliberately excluded. He drew a line. Not everything that walked the earth was worthy of salvation, and that single choice reveals a truth that still echoes into our lives today. You see, this isn't just about ancient history. It's about why God allows some things in your life and why he shuts others out. What if the creatures he excluded weren't just physical giants, but symbols of the spiritual corruption we still face? And what if understanding this is the key to knowing what to cut out of your life right now? In this video, we'll uncover the forbidden beings that God banished, the secret purpose behind the ark, and the chilling reason these creatures may still haunt our world today. Through fossils, legends, and spiritual battles you might already be facing. Let's open the ark's door and expose what was never meant to survive the storm. Most people only remember the animals that made it onto the ark, but few ever ask, what about those that didn't? You see, not every creature found favor with God. Among those left behind were the Nephilim, giants, yes, but more than that. They were the offspring of a dangerous fusion between fallen angels and human women. Think about it. These weren't your average mythical titans. They represented a corruption of the natural order, a tampering with creation so severe that their very existence cried out for judgment. Now, imagine walking among such beings, towering forms with immense strength, yet hollow inside, soulless, prideful, and completely disconnected from God's original design. They weren't meant to be part of the new world. Their presence contaminated the earth so deeply that they symbolized everything God intended to cleanse. It wasn't just about size or power, it was about purity, legacy, and what could be allowed to continue into the future. These creatures weren't just scary, they were spiritually dangerous. If you're wondering how this ties into your own life, consider this. Not everything powerful or popular is worth saving. Just like Noah had to be selective under God's guidance, we too must discern what we allow to remain in our own ark. Our lives, our homes, our habits, that toxic relationship, that thought pattern that seems unstoppable, that sin we excuse as part of who we are. Sometimes they're Nephilim in disguise. And the truth is, they can't survive the journey you're called to take. And here's something even more intriguing. These creatures didn't just vanish, they left traces. Fossils, legends, whispers in ancient texts. Some believe they inspired myths of dragons, titans, and beasts. But what if these stories are echoes of a forgotten reality? What if there's more to their exclusion from Noah's Ark than we've ever dared to explore? Well, maybe there is. But to understand that, we need to look at the ark itself, the very thing God commanded Noah to build. Noah didn't just stumble into building the ark, it was a divine blueprint straight from God. While the world around him mocked and carried on with its wickedness, Noah was laser-focused. Imagine being told to build a massive wooden vessel in the middle of dry land, 300 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high, with no water in sight. That's not just obedience, that's radical faith in action, and he didn't cut corners. Every plank, every joint was placed according to God's exact instructions. That ark was more than a boat, it was a sanctuary for a future not yet seen. God didn't leave anything to chance. He made it clear which animals were to be preserved, clean ones in sevens, unclean in pairs. This detail shows us that divine planning always accounts for sustainability, legacy, and worship. The ark wasn't just about physical survival. It was a floating ecosystem, a seed for regeneration. Even now, when planning something big, a business, a family, a fresh start, it's wise to model Noah's approach. Start with the structure, then listen for the specifics. Don't just guess. Seek the divine instruction for your path. Let's bring this closer to home. Think of your life as your own ark. Have you designed it intentionally, or are you just patching it together as you go? If you're raising kids, teaching students, or starting a ministry, what blueprint are you following? Proverbs are the Gospels, Paul's letters. Those are filled with divine instructions. Books like The Purpose-Driven Life or Mere Christianity can offer powerful reinforcement, but the foundation has to be God's Word, just like Noah's Ark was built plank by plank on divine command. And while Noah worked, can you picture the noise around him? Scoffers, distractions, doubts, all pounding on his focus like hammers on wood, yet he kept building. He knew something big was coming, something the others refused to see. But the moment he nailed in that last board, the countdown had begun, and the skies, oh, they were about to open. When the first raindrop fell, most people probably shrugged. But then the heavens roared. The fountains of the deep burst open, and water poured down like judgment itself. It wasn't just heavy rain, it was a divine reset. And right at the center of it all was the ark, sealed shut by God's own hand. That detail matters. Noah didn't close the door, God did. That moment marked the end of grace for those outside and the beginning of preservation for those within. It was a boundary between mercy and justice, drawn by the Creator himself. Now, picture Noah and his family inside, hearing the cries, the pounding fists, the terror of those who had laughed just days before. It's chilling, isn't it? But it's also a wake-up call. Sometimes in life, we wait too long to take something seriously, be it a warning, a calling, or a conviction. And just like those outside the ark, many only realize the truth when it's too late. The flood teaches us that divine timing isn't always comfortable, but it's always precise. What's your flood moment? Maybe it's the day you lose a job and realize you never built a backup plan, or a relationship hits rock bottom and you suddenly see all the signs you ignored. That's when you'll wish you had your ark ready, your support system, your faith foundation, your strategy. Reading books like Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud or Atomic Habits by James Clear can help build that inner structure before the storm hits. Because whether we like it or not, the rain comes for us all. And while the water kept rising, the ark stayed afloat. But this wasn't just about survival. It was about divine positioning. God had shut Noah in, but not to trap him. He was preserving a future. And as the waves swallowed the earth, something ancient, terrifying, and monstrous was being erased for good. As the ark floated on rising waters, the surface of the earth became a graveyard for the grotesque. But don't picture some random wipeout. This was surgical. God wasn't destroying out of rage, but purging with purpose. The creatures that once roamed, beasts fused by rebellion, hybrids never meant to exist, were being unmade. The Nephilim, those monstrous titans, were among the first to vanish. So were the massive reptiles, the twisted mutations, the unnatural experiments of a corrupted age, all of it gone. God was restoring order, not just punishing chaos. And here's the part most people miss. Not everything that exists is meant to endure. Some things are born out of darkness, ideologies, systems, habits that God never intended to thrive. That twisted corporate culture that crushes human value, it's a creature of corruption. That addiction disguised as entertainment, a beast in disguise. God's flood was literal, yes, but it's also a symbol of what happens when truth confronts distortion. The old world didn't just collapse, it was cleansed. If you're battling something in your own life that feels too big, too old, too powerful, remember what happened to those corrupted creatures. God has a way of dealing with what defies his design. It might feel like loss, but sometimes it's liberation. Maybe it's time to let the flood do its work in your life. Clean out the digital clutter, Walk away from the toxic circle. Seek healing where there's been generational trauma. Even Jesus, when he encountered demons in Mark 5, didn't counsel them, he cast them out. And as silence took over the earth, what once roared now lay beneath the deep, but Noah's ark, still afloat, still guarded by God. And as the waters began to shift, something even greater was in motion. The world wasn't just ending, it was being rewritten. When the ark finally rested and the floodwaters receded, Noah stepped out into a world that looked nothing like the one he had left. The mountains were shifted, rivers rerouted, coastlines erased. The old earth had been undone, and in its place stood a raw, unfamiliar terrain, like waking up after a storm and not recognizing your own neighborhood. This wasn't just geography, it was a complete reset. God had redrawn the canvas, preparing it for a new kind of stewardship, and with it came a subtle but powerful shift. Seasons were introduced, rhythms that echoed divine order. That might seem like a small detail, but seasons teach us something vital. Timing matters. There's a time to sow, a time to wait, a time to reap. Before the flood, time seemed endless and predictable, but now God had inserted structure into chaos. In our modern lives, this truth still applies. Maybe you're in a winter season, quiet, still, stripped bare, or perhaps spring is coming, ideas blooming, doors opening. Understanding your season helps you avoid frustration. A farmer doesn't plant in snow, and neither should you. Learn to read your life like a field, not just a clock. And then there's this. After the flood, God allowed humans to eat meat. That's a huge pivot. Before, man was a gardener. Now, he becomes a hunter. It signals a new relationship between humans and creatures, one of dominion, yes, but also responsibility. Think about how we manage that today. Are we over-consuming? Are we honoring life, even in what we eat? It's worth reflecting on what God permits and why. Books like Dominion by Tom Holland, not Spider-Man, explore how Christian ideas reshaped civilization and how the flood story fits into that larger moral arc. Still, something deeper was unfolding. The earth was different, but so were the people. Noah, his family, the animals. They all carried the memory of what was. And as they stepped into this new creation, God wasn't done speaking. In fact, he was just about to make a promise that would change how heaven communicated with earth. As the skies cleared and the sun pierced through the clouds, God introduced something completely new, a visible sign of an invisible promise. The rainbow. Not just a pretty arc in the sky, but a divine signature, a covenant written in color and light. God looked Noah in the eye and essentially said, never again. Never again would he destroy all life by flood. That rainbow became a marker of mercy, a symbol etched across the heavens to remind both man and God of their agreement. It wasn't for Noah alone, it was for every creature, every generation, every beating heart that would come after. Now, think about this. God didn't need to make that promise. He's sovereign, but he chose to. Why? Because he wanted relationship, not fear, to be the foundation going forward. And that rainbow still appears after every storm, not to warn us, but to reassure us. In the same way, God places signs in our lives today, moments of unexpected peace, breakthroughs that come after long trials, people who show up at just the right time. These are modern rainbows, covenant reminders wrapped in everyday life. Want to anchor your heart in that same covenant? Keep a prayer journal. Write down when God shows up, even in the small things. Revisit it when the skies turn gray. Study Psalms. David was a master of capturing God's faithfulness in poetic form. And when life gets overwhelming, just pause and look around. Sometimes God is speaking, not through thunder, but through beauty. Through a sunrise, a friend's call, even a quiet moment where you sense his presence. The covenant didn't end with Noah. It still echoes in our world today. But here's something curious. While God promised never to flood the earth again, he didn't say every creature would endure forever. In fact, some never returned. They were left behind, wiped out, erased from the living but not from memory. Their stories, their bones, their shadows, they live on, not in nature but in legend. Though the flood erased the corrupted creatures from the face of the earth, their memory didn't drown with them. They linger in ancient echoes, in fossilized bones, in myths of dragons, titans, and monstrous beings that once walked among men. People dismiss them as fairy tales, but legends often carry fragments of truth. The Nephilim, the hybrid creatures, those twisted beings that God refused to save on the ark, they didn't vanish from our minds. It's as if their exclusion became part of the human subconscious, surfacing in stories told around fires and carved into ancient stone. Every culture has tales of creatures that don't quite fit. The fire-breathing beasts of Europe, the massive sky gods of the Americas, the sea monsters of the East. Are these just coincidences? Or are they distorted memories of a time when corrupted life forms really did roam the earth? Think about it. If even just a few of those stories are rooted in real history, then God's decision to exclude those creatures wasn't just a judgment, it was mercy. He didn't want that version of creation to endure. And what he erased, he made sure we'd never fully resurrect. Even today, we see the fascination. Hollywood keeps bringing back the giants, the monsters, the hybrids. Why? Because deep down, we know there's something ancient there, something dangerous. We sense that not everything in our past was meant to be embraced. That's why spiritual discernment matters so much. It's not just about rejecting evil. It's about recognizing what never belonged in the first place. And if you're carrying around beliefs, habits, or spiritual compromises that look impressive but feel off, that might be a Nephilim in disguise, still whispering through the cracks. But let's be honest, those creatures, as terrifying as they were, also show us something powerful. What God did choose to preserve says just as much about his heart as what he excluded. And the deeper you go into this story, the more you'll realize the ark was never just a boat, it was a message, a prophecy, and what it reveals might just change how you see the world today. So now that you know, not every creature was welcome on Noah's ark, what about your own life? What have you been allowing in that God might be warning you to leave behind? The story of Noah isn't just ancient history, it's a mirror, a reflection of what God protects and what he purges. And the question becomes, are you building your life like Noah, or are you just hoping the storm passes without you having to make hard decisions? Let me ask you, what Nephilim have crept into your thoughts, your home, your habits? Are there beliefs or influences you've been entertaining that are slowly corrupting your spirit? Maybe it's time to do what Noah did, hear God clearly, follow him fully, and trust that what he excludes, he does for a reason. The world mocked Noah until the rain started. Don't wait for the flood to wake up. Start today. Clean house. Close that door before God has to. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think these forbidden creatures really were? Do you believe some of them still influence our world today in ways we don't fully understand? Let's talk about it in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts, your theories, your faith. And if this message stirred something in you, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and stay close. We're just getting started uncovering the mysteries that others overlook. Because in a world drifting from God, this is your ark, and we're building it together.